Listening to the Fringianity Underground podcast. Fringe topics with a Christian point of view. Now here's your host, Leo Rutledge. Today's episode is on truth being stranger than fiction when it comes to the Netflix original TV show Stranger Things and the realities behind some of the stuff that happened in real life. So with that, let's begin the show.
It's the X-Files in real life, a former top-secret espionage program that was backed by the CIA called Stargate. Recruits used remote viewing, turning themselves into psychic spies. Fox 6 News reporter Kirby Moss joins us with more on one local man who is a firm believer in the novel perceptual discipline. Kirby.
That's right, a 1975 graduate of Carlsbad High School, David Morehouse, went on to become a decorated Army Ranger commander destined to wear stars. He says during a training mission in Jordan, his helmet deflected a bullet that knocked him unconscious. An experience, Morehouse claims, turned him into a psychic warrior.
I was struck about 3 inches above the right eye in the right temporal lobe by a machine gun bullet traveling roughly 2,832 feet per second.
Knocked unconscious for almost an hour, if David Morehouse told military doctors that he saw an angel in the darkness of his mind, this third-generation soldier may have been given a medical discharge.
I kept feeling perfectly normal, just like any of us do. It was just as if I was tuned into some kind of a channel that meant I was receiving signals from something that was not right here, physically present at this moment.
Finally succumbing to mental help, Morehouse says that it was during a second assessment evaluation when the lieutenant colonel in charge sensed a psychic pulse, urged him to review a file titled Grill Flame, then asked him a psychedelic question.
Do you believe? Do you want? Do you hope? Do you pray? Do you wish? Do you desire that there is something more than the physical?
That's when Morehouse jumped at the chance to transfer to the Army's intelligence support activity at Fort Meade and joined Stargate, the government's top-secret espionage program that selected and trained personnel to transcend time and space, to view persons, places, or things remote in time and space, and to gather intelligence information on the same. Remote viewers who enter the unconscious by focusing on a set of 8 numbers.
A simple, rhythmic, dogmatic structure that allows you to open the aperture into the unconscious mind and come back with information that can be used in this existence to solve all kinds of things.
In 1988, psychic spies used remote viewing to see exactly where the bomb exploded in the plane of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. And during the Gulf War, Stargate claimed it found the whereabouts of Saddam Hussein. From 1972 to 1986, the Stanford Research Institute was contracted by the Department of Defense to study hundreds of remote viewing experiments. Utterly convinced of its reality, scientists reportedly called successful data 8 martini results because it took them 8 martinis to recover. But in 1995, the American Institutes for Research claimed the government's psychic spies were accurate only 15% of the time. And that's good enough for David Morehouse.
This was taking something that was a tremendous gift to humankind that we put science towards and unlocked a secret. And it's real. It's all real.
But the government supposedly wasn't convinced. And in 1995, after spending $20 million over 25 years of research, the CIA apparently dismantled Stargate. However, one source told me the program definitely still exists because it was too accurate, saying, quote, "It's just gone deep black somewhere else."
I'm Kirby Moss, Fox 6 News.
In the wake of World War II, the U.S. government is engaged in a large number of secret medical experiments designed to help win the Cold War. Developing techniques for mind control to create a so-called Manchurian candidate. What is the extent of these brainwashing experiments? How did the CIA become involved in such far-reaching and disturbing research? In May 1953, scientists at Porton Down are researching one of the most lethal nerve agents known to man, sarin. The experiments are conducted on military volunteers, but the young servicemen have no idea what they are letting themselves in for.
On the board there was a separate notice, typed, which said in so many words, volunteers wanted to help find a cure for the common cold.
By volunteering, Ken Earl becomes an unsuspecting guinea pig in the war against the Soviets. On May 4th at Porton Down, he and 5 other Air Force men are led into a small room by 2 technicians.
We were told by the 2 men to roll up the left sleeve. These 2 men then took 2 pieces of material and they taped them to our forearm. They then gave us each a respirator and that we were not, under any circumstances, to take off the respirator. And the door was sealed behind us. It was very, very poky, a small building. And I found out since it was a gas chamber, which puts the fear of death into you, of course. This technician, with a vial and a pipette, went round each of us, and he dripped onto this pieces of material 20 drops in 2 rows.
The clear liquid is sarin nerve agent. It is quickly absorbed into the arm through the skin. The effects are immediate.
I became absolutely claustrophobic. I didn't know what sheer terror there is in being trapped and not being able to breathe properly. You feel you can't breathe. I was sweating profusely. And I now, even today, have nightmares about it. After half an hour, we were released, gasping and spluttering and sweating into the open air. Beautiful sunny May morning. Absolute bliss. What a wonderful thing to be alive.
The corresponding paperwork clearly states the purpose of the experiment is to determine the lethal dose of sarin. After the Korean War, disturbing new intelligence reaches Washington. Hundreds of American troops are still being held captive, subjected to brainwashing experiments, and then killed. Mind control research back home intensifies. The new goal is to cause an individual to become subservient to an imposed control, to the point where he will perform acts against his will and then have no memory of the act. The search for a real-life Manchurian candidate begins. To produce such an assassin, the CIA faces 2 main challenges: how to induce amnesia and how to program in new behavior. In 1957, Dr. Ewan Cameron, an eminent psychiatrist in Montreal, believes he has the answers. Cameron applies his techniques under the guise of normal therapy.
It was a 3-part technique which started with an effort to wipe out past patterns of behavior. And this was accomplished through the use of particularly intensive, repeated, high-level electroshocks until no more convulsions could be elicited from a patient.
Cameron then plays tape-recorded messages through helmets that are locked to his patients' heads. This psychic driving forces them to listen to repetitive statements for weeks on end to program in new behavior.
Now, the final phase was to try to wipe out all recollection of what had happened, and that was accomplished by putting people to sleep for 30, 40 days, accompanied by different kinds of cocktails of drugs. Now, that's not any kind of therapy. That's a brainwashing experiment.
Okay, so that was kind of a long intro, but I really wanted to play all that stuff to really get the point across that our military or our government really does a lot of covert, underground, top secret, black project things that are not exactly what you'd call normal. They kind of walk the line of almost sorcery and witchcraft, which I think the Bible would call it that, actually. They're trying to basically use magic to fight evil, and in the Bible, magic is considered a bad thing no matter what kind it is. You can call magic white or black magic, whatever kind of magic you want to call it. Either way, it's always considered a wicked thing, and it's not condoned in the Bible. So the stuff that they're doing, they're really just using sorcery or wizardry or whatever you want to call it, just to try to have power to, see what the other guy is doing, to compete. And they keep competing until eventually one day they'll all just go to war, World War III, which is probably coming up like next week, the way the world's going. And so it's just pushing the envelope until it goes right off the cliff into the flames. But the point is, this episode really is, I'm going to analyze the show Stranger Things that's on Netflix. I'm not here to promote it or anything like that. It's a show I find interesting, and yes, there are some goods and there's some bads about it, just like most everything. Sometimes you can find good things in things that a lot of people might disagree with or whatever. But sometimes TV shows bring to light things that are not generally talked about. And then we're free to talk about those things a little bit easier because now it's brought into the public's eye so that they kind of can know what it's all about. So that's kind of why I'm doing this, is the Stranger Things TV show is pretty popular. I like it. I think it's got a mixture of like sci-fi elements like X-Files and a mixture of old school 80s kids going on an adventure type of stuff. And that's what I like about it. And I disagree with some things that are in it and everything, but I'll get into that, I guess. But the main thing here is it basically is about a small town where a government's doing experiments underground or whatever, and the experiment gets out of hand, and yada yada yada, the same old thing. But the show kind of focuses on some things that were really happening in history, as I played in the beginning of the show. MK Ultra type stuff. It doesn't really deal with mind control so much as it does remote viewing. Remote viewing is where a person douses themselves in a tank. It's called dousing or whatever, and they're in bath salts or whatever, and they basically have this thing on their head, and they can basically project their mind. They basically leave their body and go somewhere in the world that they have instructions to go to mentally or in their mind. And this really does work, apparently, because our government really likes it. Anyway, and we've had people go over to Russia and find out things. And I mean, I think that the beginning intro kind of covered it. I'll play something in a little while that actually covers that even more. But it really sums up that stuff in the show. And it's this little girl doing it in the show, and she has special mind powers because of it. She's basically like an X-Men character, and she can move things with her mind eventually. The thing is there's a monster in the show. It's also alternate dimensions, which kind of ties into, in the Bible, there is an alternate dimension. It's basically